Hey everybody, I'm back with another video with the new models that are premiering and debuting for release at the Needlework Expo. In this little video, I'm going to focus on the new berries. So let me get going. I'll start with, I'm really excited about this one. A lot of you are familiar with the Bristol orphanage samplers. And I've always been fascinated with them. I wish I owned one, but there's just not that many of them out there. The story behind the orphanages is, I think, really fascinating. And just the overall look of them is so intriguing. And so I wanted to do something about the Bristol samplers. So I contacted Claudia of Dutch Treat Designs, who's the expert on all things about Bristol samplers, and she was generous enough to share some things with me so that I could develop this project. So what I am doing and beginning for the expo, I'm releasing the first in a series of 3 sets of berries based on a Bristol sampler. So I'll have links on my website so that you can view the sampler. It's by Maria Hancock, and it's very typical of Bristol samplers. It does not have the squirrel motif in it, but other than that, you'll recognize it immediately. Claudia did provide me with the squirrel motif, so I was able to incorporate that. So let me show you this is all in the one chart pack, the first of the series of 3 being released for the expo. And this is, I know it's very creative, Bristol Berries 1. So first of all, I mentioned that I find the story of the orphanages just really, really interesting, and what they were able to accomplish. And so I did a little mini sampler. I know it's not a berry, but you get this in the chart pack too, kind of a little tribute sampler. It's just a little thing. It's hem-stitched like many of the orphanage samplers were. And there are lots and lots, all these motifs down below. The lettering used in these words are from the alphabets on Maria Hancock's sampler. I created these buildings up at the top, which are like dormitories, you know, would have been something like perhaps the buildings of the orphanages themselves. And what we've got here, it says 1836 Wilson Street. 1836 was the year that George Muller and his wife opened their first orphanage on Wilson Street in Bristol, England. It grew so quickly that they were able to expand and purchase property. And in 1849, in Ashley Down, they were able to open the larger buildings for what became the larger orphanage property. So that's what those mean. And then down here we have the initials G and M for George Muller, and the number 10,024. And what I discovered when I was doing a little studying online is that during his lifetime, 10,024 orphans passed through their doors and were cared for. It's really remarkable. So that's what this little sampler is all about. I did create a berry with one of the buildings, a little bit of a building motif there. It still says Bristol. So this is also a tribute. And there's a little corner motif there. Some of the other, all these little motifs come from Maria's sampler, even this little pot of flowers. So this kind of pairs up with the little tribute sampler a little bit. But I mentioned the squirrel. And for many of us, the Bristol squirrel is what is kind of iconic for Bristol samplers. And so I had to have a squirrel berry, right? Well, what happens, the Bristol squirrel, and I know some stitchers fondly refer to it as the evil squirrel, because there is a lot of counting that there's nothing regular or symmetrical or anything about counting this guy out. But he's quite large. He's a pretty large in terms of stitch count. So for my typical berries, he would have been really, really big. So what I did here for the full berry design with the full squirrel, it's stitched on 45 count linen over 2 threads. Now, knowing that not everybody wants to do that, you obviously have some options. You could do a linen count of your choice and stitch this over 1. That would not be my first option, but you know, if that's what you want to do, you're certainly welcome to do it. You can stitch it on any count you like. Just be aware that it's going to become a pretty good sized berry. So kind of as a answer to that little bit of a dilemma, I created another berry that's more of kind of the portrait. It's not the full size squirrel. It's the same squirrel, it's just kind of a portrait of him. You can see he's a little, this is a very deep reddish brown that I used on this one. And you can see that it's a different count linen. This is a 36 count linen, and this is the template size that my typical berries are done in. And so you can see the difference in size. Even though this one's done on 45 count, it's a lot bigger. So there's an option in the chart pack if you want to stitch it this way. Just like any other monochromatic design, I've specified what fabrics and what threads I've used for my models. Please don't get locked into that. There are lots of wonderful, wonderful red flosses to use, whether you want to use silk or cotton, and certainly any number of neutral colored linens that you might go with for these. So, you know, really do what you want there. Let me talk a little bit about the tops. The 2 that are stitched in the traditional red color palette, just simple wool caps. This one is the scallop shaped cap I like to use. There's a round wool penny on top. This is a bit of old tatting, just looped and secured with a button in the middle. This cap is actually 2 layers of the scallop. There's a cream colored wool and then the red, and I've appliqued one to the other so I have one large cap. And then I've used ribbon, more of that tatting, a little acorn charm, and just attached all that to the center of the cap, and then attached that cap to the berry. For this squirrel, it's also the creamy colored wool for the cap, but I've cut some, I think of them as oak leaves from an oak tree, 2 leaves out of dark brown wool. There's a brass charm that's an acorn, and a large straight pin. And then here I've used X's in a contrasting color when I attach the cap. So that's a really simple top treatment. So Bristol Berries 1, there will be 2 other sets of berries in the Bristol Berries series that will come out in the coming months. I'm thinking probably the next one latter part of May, and the 3rd one in perhaps late summer going into fall. So watch my Facebook page and your shop for when those are coming out if you want all 3 in the set. So that's Bristol Berries. The other thing that I've started, it's another series. This one is a seasonal series, and I'm just calling them spring berries, and then there will be summer berries, fall berries, and winter berries. We're starting with the spring, and it's a set of 3 berries. Try to hold them. They're a little difficult, so I'm going to show them to you one at a time. Each of the series will have a monochromatic design that simply says the name of the season in a short little phrase. This one says, spring has sprung, and it's just all done in a green overdyed floss on a soft, soft green linen. Has a wool cap with leaves, just one big leaf shape, a vintage button, and some sweet, just another Button Company pins. So pretty little monochromatic design that just says spring has sprung. And all through this seasonal series, each berry is going to say, have some little motto or quote about the season. And in this case, we have, is it spring yet? How many of us have been saying that lately? So is it spring yet? It's got a robin just sitting with a little branch with leaves and buds just trying to peek out. Just a real simple stitch. This cap I had some fun with. It's a green scallop base cap, but I cut out a couple layers of dark brown wool for a nest kind of look. And then these are straight pins that are made by rolling a little 1/4 inch strip of wool tightly and then inserting a pin through it. And I think it looks a little bit like 3 little eggs in the nest. So that's the top treatment there. And then the third berry in the series says hop into spring. So of course it has a rabbit. There's a bluebird up there. Just some typical little spring motifs. In the model, the rabbit is stitched in a gray Simply wool thread from the Gentle Art. But if you don't have that or don't wish to use it, just select a gray floss that you like for your rabbit and substitute that instead. This top, again, a green wool cap. See, there's some individual leaves. This flower is made from wool that it's a circle that's cut into kind of a spiral winding into the center, and then you wind it really, really tight and it turns into kind of a rosette type shape. Pretty iris colored wool. And then another pin set from just another Button Company on here that we came up with that really is darling on this particular berry. So these 3, I'll show you the tops real quick, it's kind of easier. These 3 berries, all 3 berries in the chart pack for spring berries. And finally, the last berry I have is another installment of a new series that I began last fall. No set regular release of the series, just kind of when the design suits this format, but it's called Tiptoe Through the Tulips. So I have a berry that's got a wonderful tulip on it, and then some little ones, and there's the words Tiptoe Through the Tulips. This berry has, again, base wool cap, one of those twisted wool flowers. It's not a tulip, it's a rosette, but it's just pretty spring colors. There's some more of the purple wool. This is made by just taking a couple of roughly cut flower shapes and layering them, and then they're just kind of pinched and folded in half so they don't lie flat. And then these little beads are simply colored straight pins that add a nice little pop of color. Now, along with that tulip berry pattern, You're also going to get a pattern to make a little small piece like this pin pillow. Still says Tiptoe Through the Tulips. Same color palette. In your chart pack, you get these 4 hand-dyed buttons in these pretty springtime colors. And you can use that to embellish this little piece. I went on and finished this with some rickrack from Lady Dot. She's, like I said, she's got zillions of colors. This is a little wool flower that's just got a straight pin for its center, and it's embellished with a couple other straight pins that are just pretty and colorful for just something very sweet and not very big and not very much stitching. This would be a quick little project for you if you're looking for something like that. So both the berry and the pin pillow design come in the chart pack called Tiptoe Through the Tulips. So that's all I have to show you for the models themselves. I hope you're enjoying all the previews that you're seeing. I know I've been seeing some fabulous new things coming out from folks for the expo, so I know you all have a ton of wonderful things to choose from. What I might say is this. I know there's always a big rush to get pre-orders in, and that helps your shops a lot if they know what you want. But I will say this, none of my things are a limited edition. So if you miss something, you've not missed out. You just simply need to, in a few weeks' time or later this summer, whenever it might work for you, just visit your shop. If they don't have it, they can order it for you, or call them up and see if they have it. These are going to be available to you. There's nothing limited about them, so don't get in a panic if you don't get to it right away. I think sometimes we get so wrapped up in, gotta have it now. And that's fun and it's exciting. But the reality of it is you're going to be able to get these down the road for a while. Okay? So don't get too caught up in that if you don't need to. And I'll say again, the fabric choices that I've made here, in fact, the spring berries that I showed you, they're each one stitched on a different fabric. And I do that to kind of encourage you to dig through and play with the fabrics you might already have on hand, or just make some substitutes if you need to. Just because I have selected a fabric to stitch my model in, that doesn't mean it's the only fabric that design is going to look wonderful on. So please don't feel like everything that way is set in stone, and enjoy your project and don't get too wrapped up in getting precisely what we're asking for or what I've used in the models. So it's a little bit of a soapbox for me, because I want to encourage you to use some of those other things and build your confidence about making those kinds of choices. But your shops are also willing to help you with that. So have fun with it, and I hope you have a wonderful spring, and I will have more things in a few months. Thanks so very much. Bye-bye.